Yeah, so this is a recording of the Idea Spies climate conversation. And Lynn, thank you for your introduction. Essentially, I'd like to provide a context for our discussion and then pose three main questions. The first question is, who do we believe the audience for Idea Spies and their platform actually is, and what are they looking for in climate? Secondly, what are the subjects we should be addressing for climate specifically, and that also includes the environment and biodiversity. And then an important question: when we pose when we put ideas up on the platform, what are the ideal stages for those ideas? Are they in the experimental stage? Are they likely to be in the early release stage? Are they in the wider take-up stage, or are they, do we put retro ideas up because they're coming back into fashion? Those sorts of questions. But look, just to start the discussion, okay, let me describe the three that are the most popular, because they are diverse. The first one was the hydrogen battery I mentioned. The second one was the intelligence of bees. The third one that came through was, in fact, information about a webinar that myself and one other colleague on this call was involved in, which really discussed policy and had some guest speakers and policy, and it was a promotion of that particular webinar. So I guess all I wanted to say was there is a diversity in terms of particular technology that's coming through. There's interest clearly in biodiversity and the environment. There's also interest in, if you like, policy and development of, if you like, the most influential sort of worldwide governance of climate action. So can I pose to you all maybe the questions? And the first question was really, who do you believe the audience for a platform like this might be? Are they leaders and innovators in diverse areas? Are they coming from political background, finance, business, where they're looking for innovation, finance, where they're looking for information on new trends, community action, where people are looking for, what collective action might take place in the climate. I'd really like to open the forum for discussion, and I guess either you might react with a hand up from your reaction button, or put your hand up, and I'd really welcome your comment or your questions. So let me pose the question again. Who do you believe are the audiences of a platform like this for, in this particular case, the subject of climate?
I thought I think there were four that you listed there, Jeremy, and the last two. One was sort of action groups, and what was the other one, numbers 3 and 4?
Well, community action is the fourth. Second one, third last is business. First is, and I guess this sort of the subject material, political could be audiences who are interested in government action and governance. Finance could be those people who are interested in where to invest and where to put money. Business might be those people who are interested in actually taking on ideas and developing innovation and entrepreneurial activity. And then community action. So, Pauline, maybe business and community action is what you're recommending.
I'm perhaps a little reserved about business, not big business. It'd be the SMEs more likely, who are looking around and have a much more open mind as a general rule. But notwithstanding, I've just said that there are some really large international corporations that are looking very creatively for ideas. But how widespread that is as a model, big international companies looking for, looking creatively, I'm not too sure.
Yeah. How about the rest of the room? Where else do you think audiences would be coming from for a platform like Idea Spies, such that we can be more effective? Can I pose that differently to get your, Bronwyn, go ahead.
Jeremy, George Osborne here from Hume City Council. Hi, everyone. Just in direct reference to the question about big business, Hume City Council sits in Melbourne's northwest and is home to a huge number of advanced manufacturers and logistics businesses, and large and small, including CSL Behring, who are now producing our COVID vaccine. We're engaged in a very broad-reaching program with industry to take Hume towards becoming Australia's first circular city. We're heavily invested in the circular economy. We're at the beginning of our journey. We've been running programs with manufacturing businesses and getting enormous positive response back from them. So we think we're on the leading edge of a wave, and over the next 3 to 5 years, we're expecting some enormous outcomes. So there are other organisations heavily involved in this space, such as Corio based in Queensland. I'm not sure if people are familiar with them, but there's enormous opportunity. It needs people to take the lead like you're doing, and continue to get the word out and to talk to everyone and use every communications means possible. So I'm excited to be part of the conversation this morning, and happy to share with you some of what the city of Hume is doing in Melbourne's northwest.
George, terrific response. Thank you. Makes me think that we could do more with another organisation. I'm sure you know, the Smart Energy Council. They're authors. They're a council with the membership of all the various different suppliers of smart energy equipment, and maybe feeding in ideas from them might complement exactly what you talked about. I know Bronwyn had started talking, but you might unmute, and then I'll go to William. So Bronwyn first. Unmute, please, Bronwyn. You're having trouble. Okay. Can I go to William? Thank you for joining us, William.
Hi, good morning, everyone. I'm Will Bloomfield from Department of Foreign Affairs and Trade in the Climate Innovation area. I just had a brief reflection about the platform. Congratulations on what you've been doing so far. I thought, I mean, your target market is, I imagine, people that are committed to action who want to be exposed to new ideas. And I sort of thought the concept that came to mind is really just making these Idea Spies tweets or whatever social media platform is having a sort of a bridge to action, so that people can really go, okay, that's a cool hydrogen battery. Okay, how can I incorporate that? Or bees, how can I do that in my business or local government or school or whatever? So it's sort of connecting. I sort of found that oftentimes when you go to the actual page and then you click on the link and there's no sort of I guess next step, I think. So I think that might be something to focus on.
Really good point. I like that call to action approach that maybe we incorporate.
Could I just come in here, because we're actually running a program with schools called Uprising, which started last week. And what we're trying to do there, this is as a pilot program, is to connect the students in design and technology with people in business. So this is our first attempt to go down that route, William, and it's a pilot. So we'll be telling you a bit more about what's happening with that later. But at some stage, we'd love to have people here involved in that pilot by looking at the ideas in the Uprising category on Idea Spies, separate from the climate category.
Yep. And by the way, I've featured the 3 top ones. By the way, anybody can contribute to the climate postings. So you just have to register and be part of Idea Spies and contribute at any stage. I try and contribute something around about once every week or two. And you'll see on the website, we've got numerous different examples. We've got examples where we talk about South Australia and the way their energy policies have developed. We've got another one that scored really well, which was featuring, would you believe, charcoal seed balls. And these charcoal seed balls were little balls of seeds inside charcoal that they used as somewhat fertilizer that were dropped from planes in Africa, and essentially allowed for the regeneration of trees in areas that are reasonably fertile in Africa. It got a really wonderful sort of response, a unique idea that was a quick tree growing activity. So the ideas are diverse, which sort of brings me to the next subject about what subjects should we be addressing. It overlaps obviously with energy. There might be sort of the area of mitigation or adaptation. Right now, given we've got rains and so on, there might be also subjects that we could address like meteorology and prediction of different weather forecasts that might be changing with the climate. Open to your suggestion. What areas do you think we should be focused on? I'm going to say as well as energy.
Hydrogen is a big topic. I'd be interested
in hydrogen.
There are a lot of
hydrogen is probably, is going to be headlines for now on, even though it's, as we all know, it's right now pretty expensive and in the experiment, not the developmental stage. What other areas do you think are the most important? Yeah, Angus.
Well, if you take the view that climate change is the big elephant in the room, and it's the issue that the society and the governments need to focus on, perhaps we should look at those areas which are kind of connected to it, where there has been least amount of attention, but where there is also desperate need for action. I'm thinking about environmental degradation, the ecosystem destructions, extinctions of species, and a number of people have started to raise this as a substantive issue that needs to be seriously suggested. And that's when you start thinking about wildlife, conservation, there are lots of opportunities where everybody can make a difference, particularly those people who are prepared to go out there and actually do something, because I think there's a widespread view across the community. We do love our Australian wildlife, and something must need to be done. Another area is in the degradation of oceans. I've got a very good colleague, Joseph Chambers, who worked with meteorology, who's involved in the Inspiring Science program as chair, who's getting involved in a project looking at what can we do to protect our oceans from a number of perspectives. So there are two ideas.
Angus, thank you. Back to the bees. I put another I put another post up with an echidna, a porcupine, and an echidna, and the way they dig and the way they could help actually regenerate soil health. And it got an immediate good reaction. So it's certainly an area where the animal kingdom we need to protect, and the animal kingdom can contribute so much. It's an area where particular attention is focused. Toby, go ahead.
Hi all. I was sort of thinking maybe around efficiency, in terms of what we don't use is always better. I mean, it's what I've been thinking a lot about recently, especially looking at our own individual carbon footprints. As we're set up in Australia, it's very hard to mitigate even a ton of, say, personal use, just because of we need cars to get around. We have, financial bank accounts. The way we're set up to consume is very hard. So you know, I noticed someone mentioned climate active, whether that can be more of an impactful thing, I guess, sort of building on William's idea. How can we translate that efficiency into something that's tangible that we can then measure and then build in as an impact?
Yeah, I like that a lot. I'm certainly conscious how much food we waste around the world, and given the energy and resources that go into producing food, the waste of food is enormous, and that's certainly giving me some good ideas. The other one is that there's a whole stack of development in composting at the moment happening, and councils, George, back to you, councils taking on composting as the next stage of recycling or the circular economy. So that's not efficiency, but it is, well, it certainly is all about, you know, the circular economy. Good suggestion. Any other suggestions about the specific subjects we take on? I like efficiency a lot. Thank you, Toby.
I would say, sorry, Lynette.
Lynette, go for it.
I would say one of the really big things that we've found, and we've talked about in the Climate Leaders Coalition, is that not many people outside of the experts really understand what's important in terms of transitioning to net zero. And so one of the things we're going to focus on in the Climate Leaders Coalition this year, with we're soon to be up to 31 CEOs belonging to it, is to really kind of come up with what we think is needed over the next 5 to 10 years with the transition to 2030, because that's what you need if you're going to reach net zero by 2050. And then have interim measurements in that every 5 years. Because if you look at the way CEOs are rewarded, they're rewarded short term, really, not long term. So why not come up with that transition plan to 2030, I think would be a really interesting topic.
I think that's a great comment, Lynette. And I'm conscious you might be able to tell me more, but I'm conscious that the German government had quite a significant transition plan that's underway at the moment. And maybe there are a number of ideas that we could reflect back from their experience. Lynette, do you want to comment on that?
No, I agree. I think it's a good point.
Yeah. So grabbing examples here and there where, you know, I think transition is clearly a big subject in the area is another great idea. Thank you. More comment from anybody about the subject areas. Do we focus on mitigation? Do we focus on adaptation? Naturally, we focus on renewables because that is ever increasing in its impact. Any other comments about the subject matters, the subject items that we could? And by the way, I take your point completely, Angus, about you know, degradation, wildlife conservation, biodiversity. I think, you know, that's absolutely key, because we must live with, you know, our fauna and our flora. Other comments around the room? Pauline.
I think any meaningful strategy has got to embrace all. They're all important, and they deliver in various ways. It comes down to the power brokers, whether they're CEOs, governments, or whomever, getting some sense of reward. And I'm not talking about financial reward, but recognition or payback by the whole community, because some of these things are very long term, some will cost, but most of the community are really prepared to pay, not necessarily sort of in dollars, but pay because they see the long-term benefits for a certain amount of short-term belt tightening. So it's a bit like George talking about the circular economy. It's actually got to be seen as a very long-term, but with shorter-term gains but the buy-in from the community, if they're well informed, is so great that the community will really back some hard decisions and broad decisions that will benefit the long term.
Pauline, thank you. Keith.
Yes, I'm always interested in the politics of this. Governments know what to do, but they don't know what to do. So they don't know how to get re-elected after they've done it. So politicians know what to do, but they don't know how to get re-elected after they've done it. So they don't do it.
Or before they've done it.
And so I'm interested in following up. It's Pauline's comment that has got me thinking about this, because I do a lot of talkback radio. And, you know, we have the inner city greenies from one point of view, but I tell you, there's a lot of Australia that doesn't even recognise there's a problem with climate change. You've got a whole political party on that, the Nationals, who are in that climate change denying thing. So I'm interested in ideas, very practical ideas about how you can change what's called the Overton window. So the Overton window is the space which is acceptable in terms of political ideas, and the window varies. And so what I'm interested in is how we can open that Overton window to make it much more publicly acceptable for the sort of stuff that we're covering in this conversation today.
Fascinating, Keith. That's a bit of a challenge. Interestingly, Bronwyn, let me come to you. Guy and I were facilitating a webinar recently where we had the, I'm trying to remember her surname, someone might help me, Lucinda from the Farmers Action for Climate Change. And she was good. She was a scientist and an Angus cattle breeder. Guy, can you remember Lucinda?
I'll find it out for you.
Yeah. And Keith, it was a wonderful sort of contrast, because you know, she was a dyed-in-the-wool farmer, and she was talking about the National Party and, you know, the differences between the National Farmers Federation and the National Party, which is significant on this subject, as you well know.
Yeah.
Lucinda Corrigan, is that right?
Lucinda Corrigan,
Madeline,
yeah.
thank you.
Right.
Lucinda was a wonderful and absolutely down-to-earth speaker on what she was doing on her farm and with her breeding, which was really very advanced agricultural science and animal husbandry. And those sorts of people certainly come up with ideas that challenge, if you like, the understanding of people who are maybe traditionalists, if I can say it that way, Keith. Happy to put that in the context. Bronwyn, I think it was your turn next.
Oh gosh, I'm not sure that I'm going to be able to make a decent contribution, because I'm a bit confused as to why we need to prioritise audiences in this regard. I agree with, I'm sorry, I can't remember your first name, but it's just listed as Markwell here to me.
Pauline.
Pauline. Hi, Pauline. Hi. Agree totally that you need, I think you need to be reaching, not cutting yourself off, reaching audiences right from the very top to the very bottom up. Particularly if you want to do something like change the Overton window, the best way to do that through something like Idea Spies, I think, would be to concentrate a lot on putting up stuff wherever you find it about long-term plans, because it's long-term plans that actually make sense to people and that will make them break out of the Overton window. They will give up. I mean, research clearly shows that they will give up their short-term hip pocket concerns if they think they're taking a little bit of a hit at the moment, and perhaps even voting differently will benefit their kids. So I would be looking for audiences, things that target audiences that will open up the minds of the young, but open up the minds of adults who have a vested interest in the future of their kids, and work backwards from there. You know, think, okay, that's the key audience, because each time those people come to vote, they need to have a broader array of information at their disposal, which they can get through platforms like Idea Spies. And I'd suggest you scattergun it. Don't worry about focus so much as bringing a story together on a single platform that is a multifaceted, diverse story. So think about I think the future audience is your big target, the young, and that's where my kids tell me all the time where we should be going. You know, they see me watching my computer screen every day, putting together what we're doing at Australian Community Futures Planning. We're putting together a long-term plan for Australia, and we're gathering what everybody is saying about the ways we should approach that future and the ways we shouldn't approach that future, and putting it into a plan to try to, that we'll start releasing soon a conversation about this very plan. All those, we gather ideas from places like Idea Spies to put into that, because at the moment Australians don't have a central place to go to find out either where they really should be travelling to from the future. They don't have a central place to go to find out how bad things are, where we're starting from, what a hole we're in, and they don't have any central place that links the bad stuff to the better future via decent strategies. And that's what Idea Spies provides, you know, a place for centralising a whole lot of those decent strategies. So I suggest you don't cut yourself off by anything. Just keep going broadly, listing things that interest politicians, things that interest ordinary Australians, things that interest business investors, and things that interest whatever the fourth one was. I can't remember what it was, but go for the lot. That's what I would suggest. So I'm not quite sure that adds anything to the conversation, but that's my 10 cents worth for this.
Bronwyn, that was terrific. I say that was terrific because in my mind, and I know in Lynn's mind, is this question, does Idea Spies do that, what, to quote you, the scattergun approach, or do we go down a particular focused track? And
well, as a reader of Idea Spies, I'd suggest that by being diverse in the ideas that you put on, you're actually reaching the diverse audience. You can call it scattergun if you like, but actually you're centralising diverse ideas. So great. We need more platforms like Idea Spies that actually, I mean, well, I wouldn't suggest thousands of them, but it's great to have platforms that assemble these things in one place. That's what Australians don't have at the moment. So being focused and narrowing yourself down is probably the opposite of what I would suggest you should do.
And I think Bronwyn, it goes back to the platform being intergenerational. Yes. Where you're talking about it needs to reach a wide audience. So whether it's the older corporate set down to children, which is why we've got the Uprising platform, connecting students, research and education with business and industry. So I think we're headed in the right direction.
You are.
Agree, Lynn?
Yes.
Yeah, I think it's actually very interesting what you say, because when you look at who's looking at Idea Spies, as the audience, which I can get through LinkedIn, it's very senior people, directors and CEOs, but it's also the very younger people. So we're missing out.
That's good news.
Yeah, we're missing out the middle market. And I think that's because when people say 30s, 40s, they're focusing on having kids, and that takes their attention away from looking at these broader issues. So I very much agree with your approach.
Sure. Can I just make reference, and Guy, can I get to you in 1 second? I just make reference, I've just been keeping my eye on the chat. There's a comment on the quality check that we should make in terms of the ideas that we publish. I know I'm certainly conscious of that, and I know the other editors of the other subjects on Idea Spies endeavour to source the ideas at least from, and the posts we should check on from journals and publications and information that are credible. But I take the point completely. Guy, you had a comment.
Yeah, I was just really going to pick up on Keith and Pauline's points just about the politics side of it. It's really difficult, I think, to avoid that side of things, because I think all the things that we talk about which need to happen, whether it's you know, putting carbon back in the soil, or hydrogen, or batteries, or all the things that need to be done, and which are being done on a small scale, really to accelerate the change to get to meet the 2030, Lynette's point about the transition, really needs to have the economy structured correctly. And it was interesting looking at Ross Garnaut's recent book about reset, about what needs to be done. I mean, he's got his views that Australia's so well off in sun and wind and everything else that it could power new manufacturing industries and everything else. But the key thing that's missing is really the incentives to make it happen, which is obviously a price in carbon and some of those things. So I don't know whether we should look at some of those aspects of, because it's the trouble is with when you talk about the price on carbon, it's all about it's going to destroy a lot of Australia's industries and that sort of thing. So it might be worth looking at that in some detail as to the pros and cons of it, and because it's such an important piece, really, I think, in making it all happen, particularly if we're going to get a transition by 2030.
Could I just mention on that, which we're not discussing today, but we actually have an innovation blog on Idea Spies, and so I'd really welcome any longer articles on issues related to climate that also relate to innovation. So please, if you've got any, please send them to me, because the posts that are done are 100 words. The difference with Idea Spies is that they're 100 words or less. And so we've got to focus on one particular aspect in the post. But yeah, I think that's a good idea, and we can broaden, we could be spreading more articles, longer articles, if you think they're relevant to that innovation blog space.
Lynn, can I just ask one question of you, and that is, what quality checks do we do from external postings across Idea Spies platform? What quality checks in terms of the credibility of the information?
Googling it. Yeah,
Yep.
Googling. I mean, because some things come and they're not right, and so you can go back and just check. Just more generally, I often do that because there's a lot of fake news on the web, yep. And we've got to be very careful about that. So, pretty well every idea I would look at, 100 words, make sure. And we've got one of our marketing interns online too, as she knows, don't you? That we go through everything with a fine-tooth comb, not just as from a quality point of view, not just to make sure it's not fake news, but also to ensure that it's communicated in a way that can be understood, that's simple to understand, because it's two of the aspects, yeah. But yeah, and then as you say, the editors all know that. Like we've got an AI editor who's right across AI. We've got energy editor right across energy. You work right across climate. All advising and making and checking the ideas that are posted. Thank you. And look, our other colleague on the line at the moment is Madeline Cunningham, who's the administrator for Idea Spies. And okay. Go for it, Madeline.
Okay, so I came across, Lynn and I have known each other for quite some time. I originally came across to Idea Spies as the wellbeing editor over 12 months ago. And since then have been working closely with Lynn, advising on building out the platform. So Lynn and I work very closely together day in, day out. We have a lot of fun. We spend a lot of time curating the platform. Lynn's already mentioned when you asked how do we ensure the posts are positive. We do go back and check the background information. Other things that I get involved in, I also sit on the advisory board. So if you go to the About page, you'll see Lynn already mentioned earlier on, we just appointed David Thodey as chair, which is absolutely fantastic. As you're aware, he's across all things innovation, digital and technologies. We also have Maria McNamara, who used to sit on as CEO of Advance and now has a high-profile job in government. We have Narelle Hooper, who reports a lot across corporates and research and in publications. We have Mark Stanbridge, who's an M&A corporate partner for Ashurst, that support a number of our events as well, and any developments on the platform. And we have Sabra Brooke, who was initial co-founder with Lynn coming up with the idea of Idea Spies many years ago. And we also have Glenn Barnes, who also is our governance editor, and Glenn has also joined our advisory board. So there's a good group of us that are across all the information, all the content that's coming on the platform. Other things that Lynn and I get involved in, we've got Mary on the line. Mary's our marketing intern. We also have another one from Macquarie University. So we spend a good time on client projects for the universities with Macquarie, with UNSW, with Sydney University. And we probably spend a day a week on those projects, advising and mentoring the students. So it's busy.
Thank you. Right. Couple of really good comments on the chat screen, including the technology readiness scale. There's another question we don't have time for, but what stage of development for the ideas we post? Thank you for those comments. A couple of other comments about sustainable homes and building as a subject we could address. I'm going to wrap it up in about a minute to keep on time. I really appreciate any final thoughts or comments that you haven't been able to say yet. Any sort of profound thoughts that we've missed around the room. So, Angus.
Yes, so just picking up on what Pauline and Keith said in terms of, being effective, engaging in such a way you get the attention of politicians. I think it was last year that there was the ABC ran that program in their science section with a series of Australian families looking at ways in which the, in the home environment, families could be effective. The thought occurred to me, if we're going to be effective, we've got to develop partnerships. And I wondered whether there'd be any value of engaging with that group that put that together to continue that concept, because it certainly, it was a very clever idea. It, resonated with a lot of people. The ABC gets a lot of audience, and politicians are likely to be influenced by the way volumes of people are changing their views.
I like the idea. Angus, one last thought from Pauline.
It sort of picks up what was just said. I was wondering if there's been an analysis of the damage from industry in a very, very global sort of sense, commercial world, compared to the domestic world, given there are, 27, 28 million of us. I mean, is there more capacity, in a sense, from the domestic side or the industrial side, really make that super big difference in that staged time frame we're talking about, to sort of get strategies working that we can get massive buy-in?
And I think that's part of maybe the subjects of transition that Lynette initially or a little while spoke about.
And Bronwyn's work as well, in terms of what she's doing. And I really like William's idea at the start. I think all of you who are interested in helping us with action, we'd love your suggestions, because we're trying to make people aware of these ideas through explaining them very simply in 100 words or less. But then there is a next step, and we'd love your advice on where to take it.
Thank you all for your time, your focus, your wonderful suggestions. I have so many ideas that I've got to try and put into some sort of action. Bronwyn, your scattergun approach, how to manage that with some of the focuses that we took and some of the subject areas. I think it's a good mix. Thank you so much for helping us. And I hope you keep on board with Idea Spies and the platform. Lovely to speak to you all. Cheers. Thank you.
Good.